Greetings, Agent Hunt. IMF sources have detected suspicious activity at the Surma Corporation's weapons research facility. Security leaks at the facility have become a source of serious concern to the intelligence community. You must infiltrate the Surma fortifications, discover the source of the leaks, and eliminate them. You and your IMF team must use stealth and an agile mind as your primary tools. You have learned when to remain in the shadows and when to emerge. And this mission will require measured application of these skills. But the shadows are merely one tool among the many at your disposal. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to see that the dangers born of the shadows are not allowed to see the light of day.
So welcoming to the show, I'm your host Soli, and once again, we are solidified another awesome guest, Charles Hood from Light the Fuse.
Hello.
You guys have interviewed everybody from Ronald D. Moore to Maggie Q to other key parts of the whole Mission Impossible film franchise. But in many ways, you guys have also just reminded all the film buffs how there's so much planning that goes into anything. And your interview skills have allowed all these guests to paint a bigger picture and just give some cool closure to pressing stuff that haunts every production.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride. We've been doing this for over 5 years now. It's been a lot of fun.
You've been on so many action movie podcasts. You've done the rounds there too.
Yeah, trying to get around and just spread the word to get people to listen, hopefully. Yeah.
For sure. Everybody is always talking about MI, but I have yet to see any podcast talk about comics and video game, and I just figured, hey, this would be cool to just kind of what makes these ones tick. And much like anything else we've explored, like Terminator, Indiana Jones, Star Trek, and RoboCop, what is it that makes good use of the merchandise, or is it leave a lot to be desired?
Right. We did do an episode on the video games. I don't know if you ever heard that. It was a deep dive onto all the long history of the many video games.
Then I am a fool.
But we've never done the comic books. We've been meaning to do something on the comic books for a while and just never quite had the right approach or guest or so yeah,
and thank you so much for linking. As we were planning this off air, I was like, yeah, they just did one in the 96. And you're like, they did one for Rogue Nation, it was online. I'm like, I had no idea.
The comic book, there were only those, and there's also comic books for the old 60s TV show. I have a few of those actually.
Man, look at you go. We can talk about a bit of that. Aside from the star power, authentic stunts, and just the whole for your eyes only, you can only hear this message is going to detonate in a few minutes. What do you think it is that keeps people coming back to just the whole essence of Mission Impossible?
Good question.
It's like Equalizer, where it's just a rare, or even The Fugitive. It's a rare thing where people have been introduced to some version of it in some capacity.
Right. I think, right, there's a lot of spy stuff out there. To me, it's a really good question. I really do think that the music is so iconic I think that it plays a part, I think, for people. I mean, people know that music. I mean, even when there was nothing going on Mission Impossible wise, there's still movies and things that would throw that piece of music in there to spoof, a spy, sneaking around or whatever, it's that kind of stuff. It was in the first Ace Ventura movie. It was in the
That's
Wayne's
right.
World, Wayne's World. Like, it was
Oh man.
it's always around. It's that idea of Mission Impossible. I think it's a really ridiculous and great title too, that I think is very memorable to have people,
Even
carry
people
that.
who aren't crazy about these stars will still go see these movies because there's just you. How can you not? It's just, you can't take your eyes off.
Yeah. And I think the team element too. There's something about that team element that's what separates it, I think,
We're
from
a
James
team.
Bond.
Got it.
From James Bond. So yeah, I don't know. It's a good. It's stuck around for a long time now. Obviously, having Tom Cruise behind it really helps a lot
Yeah,
for
but
the
Tom
movie
Cruise.
franchise.
Yep.
Yeah.
Stellar. And I guess you guys are the number one Mission Impossible podcast.
I don't know about
I mean, there's
about numbers. There's only a few of us.
right. There's a few others. There's Minute Impossible.
before we became official. Yeah, it was Minute Impossible, and there was Mission Impotable
There's
as
also them.
well.
Yeah, so I guess
And
you three
so
are the number
we're
ones.
the only three that I know of. So
There's plenty of spy movie podcasts, but like in
Right.
terms of the ones covering it, you guys are heavily in the way.
We each kind of had our own approach. I feel like each show kind of does its own thing, with a little bit of crossover, but enough, I think, difference to have different. Have people appreciate all three shows. I would hope.
Totally.
But yeah, our whole approach was, we were lucky. We live in L.A. and Drew works as my co-host. Drew works as a entertainment journalist, and so he interviews a lot of people. And
congrats for being on Die Hard on a Blank.
were we on Die Hard on a Blank?
Or no,
I don't think we ever were.
My bad. You were on 50 miles per hour.
Yes, 50 miles per
crossed
hour.
over with Die
Yes.
Hard on a Blank. But
Yeah, I
thinking
meant
of the
so
speed.
Drew has known Chris Tapley for a long time. I had not, which I just got to know him, and now we've become friends. We've been talking a lot because I'm obsessed with his podcast about speed. It's so great, and then we're both LA Rams fans, so we've been bonding
so
over
much
that
on
as
scene
well.
info, and I keep telling people to check it out. I'm like, I guarantee you can't find any of this trivia on Wikipedia or IMDb. It's
from 50 miles per hour about speed. You're talking about yeah.
And
it's
it is
the
amazing.
deepest of dives. Like I mean, from our show, which Light the Fuse really has been such a deep dive into. We interview anybody who's worked on any of the movies, from someone who's done craft services to cinematographers, costume designers, production designers, camera crew, special makeup effects, every single aspect of the production. And we're getting stories from everybody about the making of these movies. So it is a deep, deep dive. And Chris does a very similar thing. He's talked to all of those people as well, but his show is really like, I'm so impressed by it because his is like documentary style. Our episodes are just one interview with one person. His episode is, he's going in order through the development and pre-production and production and post-production of the movie, and making a documentary style where he cuts to different interviews that he's done. So it's a lot of work. I can't imagine.
Well, and it helped that he already had a head start by like 10 years. He was helping it out with a website, right. And so he had those phone interviews. I think we've all done this with some degree of our podcasts where we try to also just look back at what we've done, what we're proud of, what we want to revisit, instead of just, well, that was once upon a time. This is the new me.
Yeah, it's a good excuse to dive deeper into all your
recordings. So I figured we'd just kind of go into it was so interesting just looking back at the 90s Mission Impossible comic book, because it's like, again, were you able to ever read this one?
Yes.
Given the mech fan you were.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This one just blew my mind because I was just like, man, they did a pretty good job of making a very involving comic, considering the fact that the original Brian De Palma movie is a perfect example of, just because it has multiple rewrites doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a flop or not, underperform. It just, sometimes it happens. Movies get rushed. Men in Black 3 was another example of people thought was going to flop, but it still ended up with mixed reviews and decent, turnout. But it's interesting how this one, they did not have the right to use Tom Cruise's likeness. They had to keep hinting at different parts of the plot because there's like 6 different writers rewriting everything on a daily basis. What can you do?
Yeah, I think it worked because the 1996 comic is a prequel to the movie, and it sort of sets the table for what the plot of the movie is. I don't think that whoever made it, all the different people, I know, I don't know if I pronounced his name right, Rob Liefeld was involved, right?
Yes.
But he I don't know if he was I don't know who was the major creative force behind all the writing of it. I'm not sure, but I think you can tell that they didn't know. They were probably told that Kittredge was the bad guy, which actually works because that's what you're kind of meant to think while you're watching the first movie. And so the
Right.
comic book kind of sets the table for Kittredge to be the bad guy. And it gives an explanation for those who, all the people who were upset by Jim Phelps. Obviously, this is spoilers for the first movie. I'm sure this is
Oh my God, spoilers.
such an old movie. So
and how about the fact that Kittredge is now, again, a traitor in this newest one?
But like Phelps, people were upset about Jim Phelps, the character from the old TV series, being the villain at the end of the first movie. And the comic, which sort of sets up the story of the movie, sort of gives more reason for.
I think you can do it more with the spy franchise. Imagine if you had Harry Palmer being hunted down by James Bond. That would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
By great Scott, he's lost it.
But the comic, it gives more reason for why Phelps went rogue, why he became a villain. You know what I mean? Like it's good that way. It's kind of fun to see that. It also does a fun setup for it doesn't really make sense in the context of a comic by itself, but looking at it as a prequel,
it does kind of leave you with I think there's more, but there never were more. It wasn't
right.
in the.
But they do an intro for Krieger, Jean Reno's character, and they do an intro for Luther.
Oh, that's right. They
Bing
do.
Rames's characters as well, which is not really related to what's happening in the story of the comic, but they just kind of do it. It's which is cool to see. It's fun.
And lots of jumping around from a train, which is so wild because the movie itself ends with a train,
right,
sabotage. Yeah. I love how it's just urgent because you see so many other comics that just seem to want to stop for exposition, and it's just as painful as when you do it in a movie form.
Right.
And this one is pretty much run and talk, jump off, run and talk.
Yeah, I mean, exposition is always the hardest part.
So, but like Charles has said, guys, it won't give you a full picture, but it's an interesting curiosity, especially when you look at it from a 90s zeitgeist as how they were doing comics and tie-ins back then.
Yeah, it would have been fun if they did more of them, but it's a fun little comic. Yeah, for sure. I've
out of all the tie-in stuff we've done, it's not easy.
Yeah, Mission has not really had much in the way of tie-ins or merchandise, and so Drew and I are always holding on to whatever we can when it comes to that stuff.
It's always fun too, and even when you're angry with overspending amounts of money, you're like, well, hey, at least I can say I went the extra mile and I saw what they did with my beloved franchise. It's
right. Yeah.
It's interesting seeing which ones have taken over. Indiana Jones and RoboCop have had several successful comics and books. Star Trek has been making a comeback in all kinds of different other medium. And then you have plenty of other stuff like anything from Blade Runner to Phantasm to Evil Dead. And it's like, this is the second coming for them. It even makes you wonder what would a license probably be for someone to just come out of the woodwork, support an indie comic venue and say, hey, I want to do an unofficial sequel or spinoff to my favorite movie. Probably be thousands, but still be interesting to see,
Yeah.
How much is it going for?
We'll return after these messages.
The Jacked Up Review Show podcast is honored to be part of the Blind Knowledge Podcast Network. Join anytime, talk the talk, and enjoy yourselves. There's something enlightening for everyone with this crowd of cool cats. Check them out.
Hey, it's Brent Pope, the host of Breakfast with Brent Pope. You've seen me on some of your favorite TV shows saying things like, "Give it up, Jimmy. You got to sink this putt to win." On Breakfast with Brent Pope, I sit down with guests from the entertainment world, and we do it all over breakfast. Or should I say Brentfast? Every week on Brentfast, you get inside Hollywood info and tips, great breakfast recs and booty debates. Most of all, you get the most delightful 30 minutes of your week. So dig in. It's Brentfast time. Listen at Brentfast.com, Apple Podcasts, or wherever fine podcasts are found.
Do you ever find yourself thinking about who would win in a fight between Goku and Superman? Hi, I'm James Gavsey, and on the Who Would Win show, me and my co-host Ray ignore anything important happening in the outside world and debate fictional battles between characters from comics, movies, and video games.
We got a new show every week, and almost always am I the winner.
Yeah, not true, Ray.
In the past, we've discussed such matches as Captain America versus Darth Vader, Solid Snake versus the Iron Giant, classic matchups like RoboCop versus Terminator, and even the Muppets versus Sesame Street.
That one was crazy. So if you're a fan of geek culture and love a spirited debate, check out the Who Would Win show wherever you get your podcasts, or check us out at whowouldwinshow.com.
So I guess we could talk a little bit about the 2003 Mission Impossible video game. And once again, Tom Cruise didn't allow them to use his likeness, but Ving Rhames decided to come back and voice over his Luther character.
Wait, so which one is this? Is this Operation Surma, or is this another one?
Surma, yeah. I forgot.
Okay.
There was a 90s Mission Impossible game for the PlayStation, but
Yep.
that was another one. It's like, it was kind of just...
That one's the first movie. They did one for that was the first movie. You could do the hanging Langley and stuff like that. Yeah.
It really didn't have much to do with the movie, but it makes sense that, again, multiple rewrites, probably being given notes of just make it exciting. Well, that's what you're gonna do. Make it
Right.
exciting. What did you guys think of the original PlayStation? Was it on Nintendo 64 as well? I think
it was on Nintendo 64. Yeah. So I have only played a handful of the different games, and I have not played that one. But it was very much it seemed like it was kind of trying to capitalize on the success of GoldenEye, even though it wasn't really.
That's what I did hear, is that it was.
But it seems like it was not the best. From what it seems like, none of the video games were that great, to be honest.
No, but
sadly,
at least this Surma thing has its own plot, but it was labeled as a Metal Gear Solid kind of knockoff. And it's interesting how the original one was trying to be like GoldenEye the year before, but the thing was, GoldenEye was its own special thing, to where it was kind of like some of those Lord of the Rings games, where it's like it's a companion piece to both the books and the movie, but it's also its own cool interactive, hack and slash actioner. And it didn't really have that. It was just a mild curiosity. So this one, I heard some people kind of liked, but it was kind of just ignored. Maybe, Mission Impossible 2 had just come out, and this was 3 years before they brought it back again with the third one. And I always wanted to check it out, but no one really talked about it. It was always out of stock in GameSpot.
Yeah,
I was at.
Yeah, this one was on Xbox, PlayStation 2, GameCube, and Game Boy Advance. And it did have Ving Rhames' voice, which is kind of fun. But I think it was it was third person, kind of walking around type. I'm not a big video game person, so I'm sure I'm gonna have all the wrong terminology, but just bear with me.
We've had no shortage of unfriending toxic gamers. One thing I noticed in common, much like with even comic book or movie guys, they don't go the extra mile of using their words. They just choose to get angry. Oh my God, you used the wrong word. Okay, then enlighten me. Tell me what I'm missing.
Right.
Because we're all saying the same thing. I'll validate you, but you got to tell me what word you want me to use, instead of, oh, no, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, I think he does know what he's talking about. He's just not saying it the way you want it.
Right.
So it's a third person perspective where you can see the whole body. You go around rappelling, and I think you can knock people out like Splinter Cell.
Right.
I always wanted to play it, and instead I just always saw cool gameplay videos. And again, I could never get a copy of this. I don't know why it sold so poorly, considering it was fresh off the movie.
Right. Well, it seems like that was a problem maybe for both the PlayStation 1 and Nintendo 64 game and the PlayStation 2. Like the one that came out first for the first movie came out 2 years after the movie came out. It's like it didn't come out on time. It couldn't capitalize on the success of the movie. And then this one, Operation Surma, it's the team from Mission Impossible 2. It's trying to capitalize on Mission 2, but it comes out 3 years after Mission Impossible 2 came out. So it's like they didn't quite capitalize on the movie mania that could have helped, I think. Instead, it sort of comes out in sort of a dry spell where there's no Mission Impossible movie coming out. And I think that was maybe part of the problem.
Gotcha. No, this is cool to know because I've been fortunate enough. I have some pals who talked about the 24 video game as another spy movie retrospect, and they talked about how people dug some of the basic, shooting and playing as all the beloved spy characters, but hated the driving missions. And they talked to some of the game developers, and they said they were on a time crunch, didn't have enough time to develop everything they wanted. They pretty much only had time to have a decent story and a cool new original music score. But at the end of the day, it really was no different than any other just simple Sunday night, punch fest,
Right.
And it's just kind of annoying because it does make you wonder if it's almost as bad as visual effects developers. Because I'm sure if you go to Industrial Light and Magic, they're not going to have any jerk come in and tell them, hey, I need it to look like this way or that way. And years ago at UT Arlington in Dallas, Texas, I was fortunate enough to meet someone who had been one of the founders of Sony ImageWorks, who had won the Oscar for the X-ray scan in Total Recall. And they talked about how they had to choose their clients carefully as well. And there would be times where they'd get a, director who would tell them something awful like, hey, can you make this not look like shit? It's like, thanks. That really tells me everything I need to know. So I wouldn't be surprised if they had to deal with their share of people who are like, I want it, but I don't want it done better, or I just want it done faster.
Right.
It's not uncommon to have money men who don't know what they want. I think it was Activision who did it. Yep, Atari. Okay, not Activision, Atari. Yeah. So
Wow.
when they were doing some movie licensing stuff, their Terminator games were good. But
who did RoboCop versus Terminator? Because I was obsessed with that game when I was a kid.
Virgin Games, Virgin
Okay.
Interactive. Nice. Okay, another winner. They've done a lot of stuff. I always thought it was just a Sega thing because it was, in the Sega arcades. I was like, no, Virgin developed it and Sega distributed.
Right.
But this is cool to know because I'm at least glad that they went for it, because you see so many other movies and TV shows that are just not making use of their merchandise or franchise, and it's like, have a cool tie-in thing to remind people you exist.
Right.
So any other closing thoughts?
I mean, I this is another one I never got to play. Like you said, like it just sort of, I was actually playing video games at this point in college. But I never came across this one. And I wish I had at the time.
Same. I
So-
I just had the interactiveness and it looked fine. Still though, if I were to give a winner, I'm going to give the Everything or Nothing James Bond video game, like that one. I mean, that one at the time was even compared to Die Hard trilogy. Just a cool, different moves, different button tapping, different ways to proceed with a mission. What is it you think that also just rules about this Rogue Nation comic book, where finally Tom Cruise allowed them to use his likeness? Christopher McQuarrie, the writer and director, got to come up with the prequel storyline, promoted online as a tie into the Rogue Nation movie, the fifth one.
Yeah, I'm not. So we started our show in 2018, so we were really, diving deep into all kinds of Mission Impossible miscellanea. But I didn't. I was not as aware at the time in 2015, so I don't know if there was ever a physical release of this comic book, but there's a digital version, and it's pretty good. It's pretty fun. It's sort of not quite a prequel like the first movie. What it is like there's a section in the in Rogue Nation. There's the opening sequence, and then Ethan kind of goes in hiding for 6 months, And I believe this comic book takes place exclusively during those 6 months, kind of showing you Ethan tracking the syndicate and learning about all of what the syndicate is.
So sometime after he breaks out at the start of the movie and then in between before they reconvene.
Yeah, and then and then he kind of comes out of hiding and does so. It's just sort of showing you, it's filling in the blanks for you of what happened, and it's pretty fun. It's a cool little like addition to see kind of what Ethan was up to and how he was tracking the syndicate, and it's cool. Kind of a fun little fill in the blanks.
You gotta love just also how Mission Impossible, it's so hard to stand out on your own 2 feet. So the fact that they decided, hey, we're gonna just kind of just his little quieter moments where he's clearly surveying, it kind of gives him his own identity instead of, like Neo in the Matrix, I know Kung Fu, or Rambo, where, I'm a former Green Beret. I mean,
right.
when you see him even take a bullet in the opening of Rogue Nation and he's still having to, find a way to outrun the machine guns and escape the prison. And this comic does a good job of just showing he is almost literally like a samurai. He is spend time on what matters now, meditate, and then just kind of go back to his usual computer hacking, look at the diagrams and talking to people he knows something.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's a very cool read from what we could find online. I don't know why no one has repurposed it, giving the infinite amount of Mission Impossible popularity. It'd be cool to talk to someone in marketing. It's like, why don't you guys do more?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard. It's a big putting the movies together is a big enough task. I think getting everything else going is we're trying. We're in the Paramount family now. We're working. We're trying to push them to do more. We'll see what we can do.
If there were to be any other Mission Impossible comics, what do you think you'd like to see more of? Because the game could kill. They could totally redo it again and make it be what they should have done with all these other spy franchises. You can choose to be a traitor. You can choose to be a successful spy, a team leader, a hacker.
That would be fun. I mean, there's so many fun environments and sequences in the last one in Dead Reckoning Part 1 that I feel like it would make a really fun video game. Doing the train sequence in the finale as a video game, man, the jumping from climbing out of each train car as it's going over the side, like, man, that would be a good video game.
Virtual reality, it would be just as cool as especially if they use the same graphics engine as a Battlefield or Call of Duty thing. Imagine that interactivity. I mean, because there was a cool Bourne Conspiracy video game, which was awesome because it kind of used the style of the movies,
right?
While having a contained plot. I had never had so much fun button mashing, and they were able to get away with some graphic kills while still having a T rating. It was just awesome, and I think they could still do that with Mission Impossible. Guys who want to see a macho R-rated type game that you can still let kids play, it would work. It's people like that amount of mixture of brutality mixed in with suspense and stunts.
Yeah. I would love to see a video game or a comic book. This is what Drew and I always talk about. Maggie Q's character from Mission 3. Or Paula Patton's character from Ghost Protocol, like the two of them heading up a team,
show what happened to all
doing missions, like showing Maggie Q and Paula Patton.
That's a good point, because in the trailer for Part 4, they showed Rhys Myers and Q and even Luther as being MIA, possibly killed in action, and is like, yeah, I want to know their storyline, have some regurgitation of all the guys who've been part of the team.
Yeah, there's just so many fun, great actors who have been playing these different characters over the years, and it'd be fun to see them other adventures, other IMF missions.
Emmanuel Bard's character kind of gets some closure in the comic, but I would like to actually know how she became part of the team and how she later put 2 and 2 together. It's like, oh shit, Jim Phelps is about to kill me. If they wanted to even let loose and not pay a fee to use the actors' likenesses, but show maybe a cool kind of meta universe. Like, how does Jim Phelps from the TV show come over to this modern day movie saga?
Right.
And what, I mean, you would pay to see that as much as you would like to see, say, how does Hans Gruber become, the revolutionary turned, master thief in the Die Hard movies. That would be awesome.
Right. Yeah.
It wouldn't be like stuff we don't need to know because it loses no suspense. I mean, I was kind of that way with Solo. I'm like, I don't need to know how he made the Kessel Run. He's just that awesome. So, but to everyone's fairness, sometimes people want to know all the details and then make their decision, and that's cool too. I mean, they did do it with John McClane in that Year One comic book where they showed his first day on the police force,
right,
with the NYPD. But I mean, they could do that with Ethan Hunt too. Imagine if they had a game where, or better yet, how about where he's training the next badass team leader? I mean, they had that rumor for a while with Jeremy Renner. He's going to replace him, but I don't think that was ever going to come into fruition. That was just smack talking. He could have some kind of protege who he is getting in the zone saying, here's how you're going to do all these dangerous things. Here's how you find a moment to catch your breath, and your emergency gadgets when you're, rappelling, lets loose, some kind of cool adventure thing. But I would have to just probably send fan mail to Boom or Dynamite Comics.
Right.
How much merchandise would you estimate you have now of Mission Impossible? Because you got the posters, you've done all these buy-ins, you've had
I've
all
got
these
a lot. I've got you can't see it off. It's behind me. You can see the poster for the first movie framed. I've also got an awesome poster from Fallout framed as well.
Sweet.
The one where he's kind of silhouetted.
Imagine if you talked to the China stunt team. I bet you'd have plenty of stories from Simon Rhee and company during that Shanghai heist in Part 3.
Yeah. I've got. Let me see. I've got a whole drawer, like a big. It's not a small drawer. It's a very big drawer full of things. We have all the vinyl soundtracks. Those they don't fit in the drawer. The drawer is full of things other than that. I also have, La La Land record CD soundtracks, which are great. The Mondo vinyls are great. Highly recommend people get those. They're very, very well done. They're awesome. And then I've got random stuff. Like there's a Matchbox car of a van for the 1960s TV series.
Oh, sweet.
I have that. I have actually I have this right here.
Isn't it cool that the 60s TV show is streaming on Paramount still?
Yes, it's awesome. There's a great Blu-ray box set where it looks it's all
really
remastered and it looks and sounds wonderful.
Ann Warren and Leonard Nimoy look good in HD. That's great.
And they have speaking of video games, there's a Lego Dimensions video game where they did actually get the rights to play the sound from the movies.
Oh, because of all the various heists and everything. Okay.
So I've got this Lego figure of Ethan Hunt. That's one of my favorite. It's right here on my desk.
Nice.
Right here on my desk. I keep it.
That's great.
And then I've got, oh man, there's other stuff that I'm forgetting. It's all in this one drawer. I've got multiple Ghost Protocol hats that have been given to us because we wanted the special logo. The original logo before it was called Ghost Protocol was just MI with 4 dots because it was MI4. And so we have 2 different hats.
So just kind of like Revenge of the Jedi. You got these early abandoned poster prints.
I just when does this come out?
Let's aim for summer, I think.
Okay. Well, so then we coming out as of this recording, coming out tomorrow is our interview with John Woo. So we got John Woo to come on the show.
My bad. Is that okay?
Yeah, it's totally fine. Yeah. I just wanted to make sure that I didn't want to be saying it before we've announced it, but we're announcing later today actually. So is John Woo is coming on our show to talk about MI2. We got over an hour with him, and it was amazing. And he gave us we went to his production office, and he gave each me and Drew a MI2 poster that he signed and put his well wishes on. So that's
you can't
awesome.
Take that away. You can't. That's going to be a highlight. You're like, I got to meet an action cinema god.
Well, I actually told him in another part of my office, you can't see on another wall here. I've got a poster of the Killer that he signed 21 years ago. I showed him a picture of it. I was like, you signed this for me 21 years ago. It says, Dear Charles, best wishes. And then it says something in Chinese. And so I asked him, I was like, what does this say? I've been wanting to know forever. So I was able to ask him that when we saw him a couple weeks ago.
You can die with knowing
but
you've asked him everything you ever wanted to ask.
Yeah, he was doing a screening of I think Hard Boiled at the Egyptian Theater in LA when I was in college, and I went, and then he did a Q&A, and then he left, and as he was leaving, I like ran out into the alleyway outside of the Egyptian Theater, and I was like, "Oh my god, I'm such a fan!" And he was
Did you
nice
bring
enough
it
to
up? You're like,
to
remember
he signed
that one crazy.
he signed the
thing?"
killer poster. I didn't tell him that I was the crazy one. No, I didn't. But he was so nice, so great, generous with his time. It was amazing to talk to him about MI2. We just said a deep dive into MI2. I keep saying deep dive, but that's just what it is. It's a great.
No, this is why I
it's a
applaud you
great
guys.
explanation of what we do.
You guys go beyond just looking at everyone's IMDb Pro emails. You actually hit up these guys. You give them a moment. It reminds me of Track Untold, which goes beyond just talking about an actor's involvement with the franchise. What did it do for their career? It puts so many things in perspective. And I hope many other people trying to get into a similar thing, whether it's interview celebs or do a pop culture retrospect, can take a lot away from this show,
Yeah, that's our goal. Drew and I are just movie nerds, and we just want to talk to people about movies, and so we go and ask them stuff about how they got things made and about sequences we love, and yeah, it's just fun. It's a blast doing the show.
Yeah, you do so much good with it, guys. The sky's the limit, even with Mission Impossible. Pretty soon you might get a HD remaster for the 80s regurgitation of the show. Right now you can only get that on DVD, but I guarantee
yes, I have that. I have those DVDs.
It is kind of similar.
Part of my drawer full of stuff.
It's just amazing how there's a second life for anything now.
Yes.
You don't have to just wait on just this or that to access this.
Yeah. And we are going to expand. Started our expansion. I think we're going to be expanding beyond just Mission Impossible. Where we are, of course, going to get right back into Mission when the next Mission Impossible movie comes out in 2025. But for a while in 2024, we're going to take a little bit of a break from Mission and sort of expand a bit, and then
I can see you guys doing a Tom Cruise podcast.
Yeah, we'll see. It's going to be interesting. We're still working on the expansion, but I think by the time this comes out, it'll be out.
You can call it side missions.
Side missions, right?
Make it be a Patreon only. It's like, hey, today we're reviewing Tom Cruise's, Jack Reacher film or The Last Samurai.
Right. You know what is some merch that I actually have? I'm wearing right now is the watch from the first movie that Ethan wears.
No,
that's my watch. My wife got this for me for Christmas a year or two ago.
It doesn't look a day old. Oh my god,
it's amazing. Yeah, it's from '96, and they still sell them. Good reliable Casio that I still wear.
How is it still work? Have you had to put in new batteries or?
Yeah, I mean it's been on the same battery for the last couple of years and it's worked great. Actually, I found a picture now of our merch. It's been updated. We've gotten more stuff since then. This is from 2 years ago. But another thing I forgot is the Ghost Protocol shooting diary, which I cannot recommend highly enough. The Ghost Protocol shooting diary. So we interviewed David James, who's a still photographer, set photographer. He has done major movies, and that's one of our favorite interviews. He had some wonderful stories. But
this and Dads from the Crypt gave me so much closer to what goes on with how do you light a scene while a movie scene is filming.
Yeah, it's a great interview, but also this book is awesome. It's like the only thing of its kind for the Mission Impossible series, and it's just all behind the scenes photographs of the making of Ghost Protocol through the whole production. It is just awesome, beautiful photographs of them shooting in Dubai and in Vancouver and in where else they shot everywhere. Anyway, it's great. It's a great one.
Lovely. Hey, thank you for a moment of your time, but also I just got to applaud any podcaster for just keep growing, keep finding an audience. You guys did that on your own,
Yeah. Well, that's what you're doing as well. I mean, that's what we all do when we're making these shows. You just do something you're passionate about, and keep
it didn't
going
happen overnight. I had to get a few months into it and realize, hey, okay, I value my time. This is what we're gonna do. This, you got to keep growing each year, and it's not easy to tell everyone that. Some people just want to turn it on and just goof around with the mic, but
Yeah, no, it takes time. It takes a lot of time and discipline. It's cool. It's great. Just always I respect the work that goes into it. So thank you for asking me to come on the show. It's an
anytime,
honor.
dude. I'm glad you're happy though. It's just because you see so many other people who are, it's becoming a chore, it's becoming business. And it's not, it can be a chore, but it can also still be organized,
Yeah. There are moments where you're like, oh my gosh. There were moments for those first 5 years before we became the official show with Paramount. There were moments where Drew and I were kind of like, man, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? But then you get, Brian De Palma on the show or something, and you're like, this is the greatest thing ever. I can't believe this just happened. And so many other amazing people who surprise you, the people who've worked on these movies. It's never a reflection of the people we've talked to. Everyone we've talked to on the show is incredible. It's just sometimes you get to a dry spell where you're like, man, we can't get anyone to come on the show. We're having a really hard time. This is just like I'm pulling, like, it's just, man, it's just a lot of work and it's really stressful. And like we put pressure on ourselves to do an episode every week, and we did for 5 years. And that was
having
a lot.
to tell the guys, we promise your episode will upload, but it's like a movie. It's in the can. It's coming out at a specific time. And some people can't grasp that. They're like, oh, it's just audio. I'm like, no, we got to have a themed week. You don't want a low turnout, 3 people clicking on your episode. That's not a win. You want to, and then you got to promote it on social media and make sure the poster grabs them.
Yep.
But you guys are doing good on Twitter. I see so many other podcasts that kind of, they got great content, but they're not promoting themselves. And it's like, guys, remind us you exist.
Yeah.
I applaud you guys. And the go get 'em attitude is sadly missing these days.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of people out there. They're doing their best. Everybody's working hard. I feel like there are a lot of great shows. And so, just happy
there are. It's so rare to just see someone is like, but you remind us you love what you do.
Yeah, you gotta love it in order to put in that much time and effort. So yeah, it's fun to find someone like yourself who's,
thank you,
committed as well. We should be committed. We should be to a mental
institute. That's the best way to put it.
For this.
Commitment.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you stay safe out there. Enjoy the holiday.
You too. Yeah. Oh yeah. Go check us out. Light the Fuse, the official Mission Impossible podcast, and we are at Light the Fuse Pod on all the different social media wherever you go. So follow us there.
And John Wood, that's no small feat. He's not one who always gives interviews. So
we do episodes every Tuesday, and that one's it's a 2-parter. It's over an hour long, the interview we did with him, and so it's it's a great one.
You got this, Tiger.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening. It's a